Hey, welcome back to Bobb-z Callahan's Word of Advice. And in this second video for today, I wanted to talk about that oh-so-famous topic, which is judging. Yes, I believe all of us have had our thoughts on judging and whether it's right or wrong. And I'm sure you've heard of some people who have told you, don't judge because it's not a good thing. Others will judge you. And I believe over time that this has been one of those very debatable topics. And if you want me to put my 50 cents in on this topic, I will boldly state that I believe there is good judging and there's bad judging. An example of good judging can come in handy in several different ways, but I'll use the example of driving. So let's say you're going out for a drive to a certain place, like maybe you're going out to a restaurant. Okay. And before you even consider getting into the car, let's say you're making a judgment by saying to yourself, yes, I am completely sober and I feel well enough to drive, and I feel like if I drive today, I'll be able to drive safely. And then let's say when you get in the car, you put your seatbelt on and you really don't give yourself any distractions, and when you're on the road, you decide to follow the speed limit. You don't go over too much or under too much. And when you're driving, you decide that you're not going to tailgate anybody and you're not going to threaten anybody's life through your driving habits. And you're really just trying to get to your destination safely. See, I believe that is an example of good judging. And in all honesty, I believe all of us have made good judgment in some kind of way several times throughout our lives. You know, I'm sure a lot of us have made good judging in driving, or in how we treat people, or how it comes to our schedules and our everyday life. I mean, all of us have probably made good judgment at some point in time. It's kind of like making a good decision or a totally right decision when you use good judgment. Now, bad judgment, which is the certain kind of judgment which people have said not to use, can be found in an example of just kind of treating people unfairly. Like, let's say, for example, you're at school and there's this bully who comes up to you and he says to you, hey, you suck, or I don't want to sit with you, or whatever. You encounter a bully who says something to you which isn't nice. And at that point, you decide to either go off on that bully, or you decide to hurt that bully physically, and then all chaos breaks loose. You see, I believe that's an example of bad judgment. Or another example of bad judgment, which I believe is also well discussed, is just simply talking about somebody when you don't even know them. Like, let's say, for example, you and your friends notice at lunch this kid who is kind of like a goth, or he or she looks like a goth. And sure, you and your friends may think to yourself, well, gee, that person looks like a goth, so they must be a real weirdo, or they may be creepy, or they may be mean. Who knows? So you and your friends decide to either ignore that person who looks like a goth or make fun of that person who looks like a goth, without giving that person any chance at all to form a relationship with you. See, I believe that's another example of bad judgment right there. Several people, and I'm guilty of this as well, have made a certain viewpoint about somebody without even getting to know them. And we are judging other people for maybe their appearance or by stuff we've heard about them. And in the end, that kind of unfair judgment is simply not right. You know, if we use that kind of bad judgment, then we can hurt people's feelings really badly. You know, I remember hearing about a guy who didn't really know me well, but he heard that I have a lot of money. So he assumed that I was somebody who is snobby. Well, when I heard about that, my feelings were honestly hurt a little bit. Because even though I grew up in a family which had and still has a lot of money, that doesn't mean that I'm a snobby person. You know, when it comes to this kind of judgment, I would really discourage it. I would always say try to use good judgment, whether it comes to something like driving or when it comes to talking to people or trying to get to know people. Always make right decisions and try to make fair decisions. But don't use bad judgment if you can help it. Yes, there are going to be times when we mess up, but we don't have to mess up and use bad judgment on purpose. I believe if we always strive to make good judgment as often as possible, then we will find plenty of rewards in doing that. Because I very much believe that people get along with people who use good judgment much better than people who use bad judgment. And you can be that kind of person too, who can form that habit of making good judgment as much as possible. It may not always be easy, but it is definitely beneficial and rewarding if all of us try to use good judgment as much as possible. So just kind of wrapping up this video, remember, you can either use good judgment or bad judgment. And in reality, there is good judgment and bad judgment. But between the two, I would say always try to use good judgment as often as possible. I believe if you use good judgment, then you will find many rewards in doing so. So just think slowly and consider other people's feelings. Consider how a judgment is going to affect you, and overall, just try to make as many smart decisions and smart judgments as much as you can. And with that, this is pretty much all I have to talk about when it comes to this topic. And I certainly hope what I've had to talk about on the topic of judging will come in handy. Come back for another word of advice video. Peace out.